Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Please turn to page 6 and read along with me, please. Top of page 6. We enter this sanctuary to welcome Shabbat. Within these walls, we sit surrounded by numberless generations. Our ancestors built the synagogue as a visible sign of God's presence in their midst. Throughout our long history and our endless wanderings, it has endured, a beacon of truth, love, and justice for all humanity. Its presence guided our ancestors to lives of righteousness, holding up to them a vision of their truest selves. Now, we, in our turn, come into this sanctuary to affirm the sacredness of our lives. May we enter this place in peace. May holiness wrap around us as we cross its threshold. Weariness, doubt, the flaws within our human hearts, the harshness of the weak. Let these drop away at the door. In the brightness of Shabbat, let peace settle upon us as we lift our hearts in prayer. And then please turn to page 10 and join me in Hine Matov. Hine Matov Manayim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Matov Manayim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Matov Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Matov Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Matov Manayim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Matov Manayim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. How good and how pleasant it is that brothers and sisters dwell together. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Thank you for being here. It is always a pleasure and an honor to be able to lead the service. And so let's get started. And let's turn to page 2 for the lighting of the Shabbat candles, okay? And you folks need to really sing out and speak up tonight, okay? Oh, there we go. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Amen. Please rise and join Aidan in the singing of the Kiddush on page 5.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam
asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu Shabbat Kadsho B'Yahava Zonkin Kilanu Zicharon L'Maaseh Bereshit Ki Hu Yom Techila L'Mikrahei Kodesh Zecher L'Tziat Mitzrayim Kivanu V'Acharta V'Yotanu Kidashta Mikol Ha'amim V'Shabbat Kadkashka B'Yahava Uvratzon Hincholtanu Baruch Atah Adonai Mikadesh HaShabbat. Amen. All right. Good work. Okay, please be seated. Okay, please join me on page 7 as we read together, Where Has This Week Vanished? Where has this week vanished? Is it lost forever? Will I ever recover anything from it? The joy of life, the unexpected victory, the realized hope, the task accomplished? Will I ever be able to banish the memory of pain, the sting of defeat, the heaviness of boredom? On this day, let me keep for a while what must drift away. On this day, let me be free of the burdens that must return. On this day, Shabbat abide. Help me to withdraw for a while from the flight of time, contain the retreat of the hours and the days from the grasp of frantic life. Let me learn to pause, if only for this day. Let me find peace on this day. Let me enter into a quiet world this day. On this day, Shabbat abide. Okie dokie, let's turn to page 12 and let's sing Lechuna Ranana. Lechuna Ranana, Lechuna Ranana, Lechuna Ranana, Lahadonai. Lechuna Ranana, Lechuna Ranana, Lechuna Ranana, Lahadonai. Naria, Litzur Vishenu, Nichad Mafanav Kodam. Naria, Litzur Vishenu, Bizmirot Naria Lo. Lechuna Ranana, Lechuna Ranana, Lechuna Ranana, Lahadonai. Lechuna Ranana, Lechuna Ranana, Lechuna Ranana, Lahadonai. Come, let us sing joyously to Adonai. Raise a shout for our rock and our deliverer. Let us come into God's presence with praise. Let us raise a shout for God in song. For Adonai is a great God, the great ruler of all divine things. And now, let's turn to page 20 and let's sing Lecha Dodi together, joyously. Lecha Dodi lechikrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabala. Lecha Dodi lechikrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabala. Lecha Dodi, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabala. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabala. Shamor v'zikor b'dibur echad, Hishmianu elcham yuchad, Adonai echad, Ushemo echad, L'shem ultiferet v'litilam. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabala. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabala. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nilcha, Ki hi mikor habracha, Mehirosh michadem, En sucha sof maseh b'machashava techila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabala. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabala. Boi vishalom ataret balam, Gam simchav ufsochola toch emuni, Am segula boi chala. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabala. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nikabala. Please be seated. Okay. I'd like to read a poem for the arrival of Shabbat. Well of life, bless my heart with the gifts of Shabbat, the presence of your love in my pulse, your glory in my chest, and your wonder in my breath. Bless my eyes with the gifts of Shabbat, seeing the beauty of the candlesticks, the Kiddush cup, and the chalot. Bless my lips with the gifts of Shabbat, rejoicing in song and prayer, singing melodies ancient and new. Bless my ears with the gifts of Shabbat, hearing hymns and praises, the nigunim of old and blessed words of Torah. Bless my soul with the gifts of Shabbat, awe and thanksgiving, calm and surrender, beauty and righteousness and peace. Let these gifts descend gently on all your people Israel, so that together, wherever we may be, in one voice, from the four corners of the earth, we sing, Boachem la shalom, come in peace. Malachei HaShalom, messengers of peace. Malachei Elyon, angels of the Most High. And let's turn to page 24, and let's welcome the angels of Shabbat. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech, Malachei HaMlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi-Melech, Malachei HaMlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barchuni l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi-Melech, Malachei HaMlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi-Melech, Malachei HaMlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Peace be to you, O ministering angels, messengers of the Most High, Majesty of majesties, Holy One of blessing. Okay, so please turn to page 26 and join Aiden in the chanting of the Chatzi Kaddish.
Yitgadol vayitgadashame rabba. Be'alma divarach yote v'yamlik machote. Bechayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala, uvizman kariv, v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevorach, le'olam u'olmei olmaya, yitbarach. Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yipar, v'yitamam, v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar, v'yitalev, v'yitalo. Shemei dekudasha, brihu. Le'elam yinkol v'yata v'shirata.
Tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran bi'alma, v'imru amen. Okay, let's turn to page 146, and we're going to join Aiden with the Baruch. Okay, and the door's already open, so all I have to do is pull back the curtain here. Okay. Okay.
Baruch et Adonai Hamborach.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Leolam Vahed.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach le'olam va'ed. Wait, what am I missing? Am I missing something?
I think you're good.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Okay. And so turn to the next page, 147, and please read the Ma'ariv Aravim with Aiden in English. And you may be seated. I'm sorry. Please be seated.
Adonai, your majesty is proclaimed by the marvels of earth and sky. Sun, moon, and the stars testify your power and wisdom. Day follows day in endless succession, and the years vanish, but your sovereignty endures. Through all things pass, let not your glory depart from us. Help us become co-workers with you, and endow our fleeting days with abiding worth. Baruch atah Adonai
Hama'ariv Aravim. Okay, and then turn the page to 148 and continue with Aiden in English at the bottom.
In each age we receive and transmit Torah. At each moment we are addressed by the world. In each age we are challenged by our ancient teaching. At each moment we stand to face with truth.
In each age we add our wisdom to that which has gone before. At each moment the knowing heart is filled with wonder. In each age the children of Torah become its builders and seek to set the world firm on a foundation of truth. Baruch atah Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael. Okay, and now please turn to page 149 and let's sing the Shema. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Okay, now we're going to turn to page 150 and we're going to do the V'ahavta.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anohi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha vaderech Ushoch becha, ukumecha, ukshartam leod, decha, v'hayula totafod, einecha, uktavtam, amizuzo betecha, uvisharecha, leman tiskeru, v'asitem, gomitzvotai, vitem kiddushim, lelohehem, Ani Adonai Elohehem Asher Hotzeiti Ethem Me'eretz Mitzrayim Lihiot Lahem Elohim Ani Adonai Elohehem.
Amen. Good work. Okay, and let's turn to page 154, and let's rise and join me in singing the Shamru. Oh, excuse me, we're going to do the Michamocha first. Go to page 152. Go to page 152, and we're going to do Michamocha first. Michamocha ba'elim Adonai, Michamocha nehedar b'chodesh, Nora tehilot, osefele, Nora tehilot, osefele. Who is like you, O God, among the gods that are worshipped? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in splendor, working wonders? Now we're going to turn to page 154, and we're going to rise, and we're going to sing Vishamru. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat lahazot et ha-Shabbat ledoretam barit olam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat lahazot et ha-Shabbat ledoretam barit olam. Vein uvein b'nei Yisrael le'olam od hitlei le'olam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat lahazot et ha-Shabbat ledoretam barit olam. Ki sheshet yamin asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha-oret. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat lahazot et ha-Shabbat ledoretam barit olam. Uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat v'yanafash, Shabbat v'yanafash, Shabbat v'yanafash. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat lahazot et ha-Shabbat ledoretam barit olam. All right. Now let's turn to page 155 and join Aidan in the reading of the Tefillah. And after we do the Tefillah, let's pray silently to page 167, and we will end with Oseh Shalom. Okay? Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Oh, say shalom bimromav. Huya say shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imru, amen. Yahaseh shalom, Yahaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yahaseh shalom, Yahaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Say shalom, Yahaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yahaseh shalom, Yahaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Okay. Tonight's parashat is called Vayera. It's Genesis 18:1 to 22:24. This is a long parashat that covers a lot of ground and three very important stories from the Torah. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah, the Akedah, or the binding of Isaac, and the initial covenant between God and Abraham. The parashat begins by saying, the Lord appeared to him, Abraham, by the terebinths, these are oaks, of Mamre, which is near Hebron in the land of Canaan. He was sitting at the entrance of the tent as the day grew hot. Looking up, he saw three men standing near him. As soon as he saw them, he ran from the entrance of the tent to greet them, and bowing to the ground, he said, "My lords, if it please you, do not go on past your servant. Let a little water be brought, bathe your feet, and recline under the tree." Abraham not only brings them water, he feeds them a meal prepared by his wife Sarah. After the meal is served, one of the three men predicts that within the year Sarah will give birth to a child. Now Abraham is close to 100 and Sarah 90. Up to this time they are childless. Abraham seems unfazed by this prediction, but Sarah is skeptical to say the least. God takes note of Sarah's doubt and says, "Is there anything too wondrous for the Lord? I will return to you at the same season next year, and Sarah shall have a son." The story progresses with Abraham seeing his guests down the road to Sodom, where they have undisclosed business. It's unclear if Abraham understands these men are angels sent by God to help determine whether or not the towns of Sodom and Gomorrah are to be saved or destroyed. It's at this point that God interjects himself, revealing to Abraham his plans to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham famously argues with God that he should spare the two towns despite their evil practices. Abraham challenges God and says, "Will you sweep away the innocent along with the guilty? What if there should be 50 innocent along with the guilty? Will you then wipe out the place and not forgive it for the sake of the innocent 50 who are in it?" And the Lord answered, "If I find within the city of Sodom 50 innocent ones, I will forgive the whole place for their sake." Abraham's conversation with God continues. Each time Abraham speaks, he challenges God to spare the two towns, even if there are only 45 innocents within the cities. The conversation continues, and each time Abraham speaks, he asks the Lord to lower the threshold of innocence before he decides to destroy the cities. Abraham says, "Let not my Lord be angry if I speak but this last time. What if 10 should be found there?" And he answered, "I will not destroy for the sake of the 10. We ultimately discover that not even 10 innocents reside in Sodom and Gomorrah, and the towns are destroyed accordingly. The story progresses with the birth of Isaac to Sarah and Abraham as predicted by God, the banishment of Hagar and Ishmael, and finally arrives at the Akedah, or the binding of Isaac. And it's at this point that the story becomes particularly problematic for many people, including myself. When we compare Abraham's aggressive defense of Sodom and Gomorrah with his remarkable and dumbfounding passivity in response to God's request that he sacrifice his only son, we are stopped in our tracks. I never tire of hearing this story, so here's a summary of the binding of Isaac as excerpted from myjewishlearning.com. And it came to pass that God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. Here I am, Abraham responded. God said, take, I beg of you, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and get yourself to the land of Moriah and offer him on one of the mountains. So Abraham did as he was told, journeying with his wood for the offering and with his son and his servants to the place that God had told him. On the third day, Abraham and Isaac left the servants and took the wood for the offering, some fire and a knife. So they went, both of them, together. Isaac spoke to his father Abraham, my father. Abraham said, here I am, my son. Here is the fire and the wood. Where is the lamb for the offering? Asked Isaac. God will see that we have a lamb for the offering, my son. They came to the place of which God had spoken, and Abraham built the altar and arranged the wood and bound Isaac his son and placed him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. And the angel of God called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. Here I am, said Abraham. And God said, do not stretch your hand toward the lad, nor do the slightest thing to him, for now I know that you are God-fearing and did not withhold from me. An angel of God called to Abraham a second time out of heaven and said, by myself I have sworn, says God, because you have done this thing and not withheld from me your son, your only son, that I will bless you without fail, and without fail multiply your descendants as the stars in heaven and as the sand that is on the seashore. And your seed shall inherit the gate of its enemies. And all the nations of the earth shall bless themselves through your seed as a consequence of having hearkened to my voice. Then Abraham and Isaac and the servants returned to Beersheba. We're dumbfounded at the passivity of Abraham and his willingness to sacrifice his son, a child for whom he and Sarah have waited decades. This is especially true in light of his wrestling with God over the fate of Sodom and Gomorrah, two towns filled with terrible people he doesn't even know. What was he possibly thinking he was going to tell Sarah when he arrived home without their child? Oh, and by the way, I was speaking with God the other day, and he told me to kill our son. So I did. The Torah doesn't give us any insight into Abraham's, let alone Isaac's, frame of mind as this drama plays out. So what is the meaning of this story beyond the truly important fact of God's initial covenant with a man who becomes the progenitor of the Jewish people? How does it apply to us as modern Jews in an increasingly complex world? A world where an individual's personal beliefs and decisions are bumping up against the laws and regulations that make for a civil society. I found this commentary by Rabbi Erwin Kula on Parashat Vayera that sheds some light on these issues. Abraham's challenge to God regarding the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah and Abraham's submission to God's command to sacrifice Isaac provide a profound insight into the nature of the covenant. In the first story, Abraham questions, argues, and convinces God to back down from an extreme position. The radical assumption underlying Abraham's protest is that God must follow a standard of justice comprehensible to Abraham. This suggests that human judgment over and against God is valid and that the human partner plays an active role in determining what is right and wrong. Rabbi Kula continues, yet the same bold challenging Abraham demonstrates absolute submission before God's terrifying command to sacrifice his son, though surely this violates his sense of justice. Only after Abraham has proven he will obey this command is a ram provided in Isaac's place. This suggests that there is no alternative to the acceptance of God's will and that the human role in the covenant is submission. Rabbi Kula continues, The Torah's inclusion of both stories teaches that the Jewish way cannot be reduced to either perspective. By itself, the deeply autonomous thrust of the Sodom and Gomorrah story would lead to a Judaism in which the human conscience would eliminate anything that offended it. God, Torah, the tradition would become synonymous with whatever human beings want. Every person would decide what is right and what is wrong. But reducing the Jewish way to the deeply submissive thrust of the Akedah would lead to a fanaticism in which no act, no matter how repugnant, could be ruled out. A mindless obedience enslaving the human being and destroying his or her dignity. Rabbi Kula concludes by saying, the genius of the covenantal way is that these two powerful principles, autonomy and heteronomy, are yoked together and held in creative tension. Both challenging and submitting to God and the tradition are authentic covenantal responses to the dilemmas of Jewish life. The covenantal question addressed to each generation and even each person is when to act and in which way. Autonomy versus heteronomy. Autonomy is defined as self-directing, freedom, and moral independence. Heteronomy is defined as subjection to something else, especially a lack of moral freedom or self-determination. When I read Parashat Vayera and the commentary from Rabbi Kula, and then the definitions of autonomy and heteronomy, I'm struck by how universal this push-pull has been on humans since tens of thousands of years before the Torah was even codified. We as individuals, Jewish or Gentile, must follow a moral compass that is consistent with our beliefs. But at the same time, we as a group of individuals must be able to agree on a set of values that enable us to act as a community. We see these conflicting principles at work in tonight's parashat and the story of Sodom and Gomorrah and the binding of Isaac. We see these conflicting principles at work today in a society that is unable to agree on a way forward and feels as though it wants to pull itself apart. This Torah portion is an extreme example of the moral dilemmas we face every day, specifically whether to follow what our gut tells us, spare the child, or to get in line and follow the rules, do what God or the state demands of us. Both of these principles, autonomy and heteronomy, in balance, are what create a vibrant and civil society. It's what is required if we're to survive as a species. I'm not smart enough nor eloquent enough to provide answers to the world's very real, urgent, and vexing moral questions, made all the more difficult by the push and pull of autonomy and heteronomy. But I do know this about healing our common wounds and the start of Tikkun Olam. The next time your spouse, child, or neighbor are driving you crazy, and you get that murderous glint in your eye, and you believe you hear the voice of God telling you to sacrifice these folks on an altar, don't do it. It's probably not the voice of God you're hearing, and that's not really what He wants. Instead, try giving these people a literal or figurative hug. That's what I would want. It's probably what God would want. And it's at that point that healing can begin. Shabbat Shalom. Please turn to page 117, and at the top, please read with me. Okay. When justice burns within us like a flaming fire, when love evokes willing sacrifice from us, when, to the last full measure of selfless devotion, we demonstrate our belief in the ultimate triumph of truth and righteousness, then your goodness enters our lives and we can begin to change the world. And when you live in our hearts and we, through righteousness, behold your presence. Okay, I'd like to read another poem. Called The Axis of Healing. Your heart is the axis of healing, drawing passion and fire from the hot core of the earth, drawing energy and possibility from the pulsing edge of the universe, drawing light from the shadows and the secret brilliance that surrounds us, so that your mind is clear and your body radiates love. Your heart is the axis of healing, drawing empathy from the pain of others, drawing inspiration when you witness sorrow transformed into hope, so that your deeds are pure, your hands strong and tender, and your life becomes the medicine that heals the world. Now let us turn our prayers to those in our community in need of physical or spiritual healing. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless these members of our community. Markham Becker, brother of Jerome Becker, Robin Cohen, Raul and Manuela da Silva, parents of Rita Becker, Diana Heller, Barbara and Chip Kurtzman, Rick Moss, David Podolsky, Cheryl Shullum, John Sitters, Ellen and Michael Weingarten, Toby Shearer, mother of Don Daner and Michelle Robles, Kit Levine, Adam Levine's mother. And if there's anybody else in the congregation who would like to mention the name of someone who's in need of healing, please do so now. Okay. Very well, thank you. Send them all comfort and relief speedily in our days, and grant them a complete healing of body, mind, and spirit. Blessed are you, source of life, who helps us to bring light where there is darkness and healing where there is brokenness. Let's turn to page 253 and join me in singing the Misha Berach. Sheberach avotenu mechor habracha me'imotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Sheberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Okay, let's turn to page 282. And let's rise for the Aleinu. And please continue standing through the Aleinu for the Kaddish. Now, I was going to try something new tonight that I hadn't done before, and that is to sing all three parts of the Aleinu. But honestly, do you want to come up here and lead it? Because I honestly don't. I'm not confident enough. I talked to Cindy about doing it. So let's just do the Aleinu on 282, and then we'll go to 287 for the B'nai Amar. Okay, and then continue standing, and we'll do the Kaddish. Okay. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula liotzer bereshit, shehu noteh shelo samchel chinuch hachem v'gor aleinu k'kol ha'amonan. V'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech ha'aretz bayom hahu yihei Adonai echad Ushemo echad Ushemo echad. Little ad lib tonight. God. Okay. Next time I do the Aleinu, I'll start on the right one. So let's do the Kaddish, and please join Aiden. Our thoughts turn to those who are no longer with us, and for those who are observing the yahrzeit of a loved one this Shabbat. We remember Vern McDonald, husband of Arlene McDonald, Miriam Landman, mother of Jackie Ramsdell, Lori Gersh, daughter of Steve and Sue Weiss. And we remember Norman Becker, uncle of Jerome Becker, who passed away this month. And we take into our hearts all those who have no one to say Kaddish for them. Jackie, would you like to come up and light the memorial candle? Okay. Let's wait for.
We should make it a requirement to take your mask off when you go light candles. Otherwise, you're going to burn your salt and burn twice down.
Okay.
Yit Gadol
V'yit
v'yit
Kadash Shemei Rabbah, B'yalma Divra Kirute V'yamlich Malchute, B'chayechon U'v'yomechon, U'chaye Dekol Beit Yisrael, B'agala U'v'zman Kariv V'yamru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevarach, Le'alam U'almei Almaya, Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitkar V'yitroman V'yitnaseh V'yithadar V'yitaleh V'yithalal Shemei Dekudashah B'richu Leilal Min Kol Birchata V'sharata Tushbechata V'nechamata Damiran B'alma V'yamru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabbah Min Shemaya V'chayim Aleinu V'yakol Yisrael V'yamru Amen. Osei Shalom ben Romav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu v'yakol Yisrael, v'yamru, Amen. You may be seated. A prayer for our country. Our God and God of our ancestors, we invoke your blessing upon our country, on the government and leaders of our nation, and on all who exercise rightful authority in our community. Guide them out of your law that they may do their important work with justice and equity, uniting our communities in kinship for the common good, safeguarding our ideals and institutions of freedom. Bless and protect those brave women and men who risk their lives to protect the welfare of your creation, and keep them from harm as they work to maintain peace and security for all. May it be your will that you lead them in peace and that you bless the work of their hands and deeds and fill their hearts with faith and courage. Grant us true peace in fulfillment of the words of your prophets. Nation shall not lift up sword against another nation, nor shall they learn war anymore. Okay, we have a couple of announcements. We have actually one birthday, Denise Dolan, on Tuesday, October 26th. And Aiden, I think you have an announcement you'd like to make about your bar mitzvah project. Let's step on up here.
Good evening. My name is Aiden Ramsdale, and my bar mitzvah's coming up. And for my project, I'm working with an organization called Shoes That Fit. And what they do is they take new shoes and give them to kids that don't have shoes that fit. And I've reached 70% of my goal. And if you'd like to support what I'm doing, the link should be in the weekly or monthly newsletter. What?
Or you can save.
Or you can save bottles and cans, and we'll be taking those
Soon.
soon, yeah.
Sunday, November 14th.
Sunday, November 14th.
Good work. Good work. Good work.
Table goes up here at the synagogue?
Yes.
Between 9:30 and noon. Okay. It's in the newsletter. Yeah, I saw it in the newsletter. Just kind of getting it registering here.
Okay. I want to say a thank you to all of the people who made this live stream tonight possible. A big yasher koach to Aiden Ramsdale. You knocked it out of the park. Cindy Dixon Levine, who is our talented musical accompanist. Thor Larson, who's running the video feed tonight. And Nachshon Margalit, Leslie Moss, and last but not least, Rabbi Janice Mayring. To end tonight's service, please turn to page 360 and let's read Turn, Turn, Turn. This is based on Ecclesiastes 3:1 through 8. I'm sorry, page 360. Yeah, page 360. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die. A time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep, a time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together, a time of love, a time of hate, a time of war, a time of peace, a time you may embrace, a time to refrain from embracing, a time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time of love, a time of hate, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.